Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Indie Pop Girl, the podcast for music chat, new releases, hidden gems, and nostalgic deep dives. We are at the halfway mark with the Underrated Gems series, and I hope you are all enjoying it so far. For this week, I'll be discussing a 2010 pop record, which did have its moments at the time, but I feel has been quickly forgotten about. I'm talking about Happiness, the debut album from Hertz. And before we get into the episode, if you enjoy music discussions like this, please consider following the podcast or leaving a like, depending on where you're listening. It really helps the show reach more people, and it means a lot for a small independent podcast like this one. Happiness is the debut studio album by English synth-pop duo Hertz. It was released on the 27th of August 2010 by RCA Records. The production was handled by Hertz with Joseph Cross, The Nexus and Jonas Quant. The record also features a duet with Kylie Minogue on the song Devotion, but more on that later. Happiness became the fastest selling debut album by a band in the UK during 2010 and has since sold over 2 million copies worldwide. In 2025, the duo celebrated the album's 15th anniversary. The record was finally repressed on vinyl, and Hertz performed the record in its entirety during a series of live shows. Happiness draws heavily from 80s influences, with artists such as Pet Shop Boys, Depeche Mode and Tears for Fears. Hertz also balanced the synth-pop with orchestral flourishes throughout the record, performed by the London Studio Orchestra, conducted by Simon Hale. This brings in a cinematic and melancholic feel to the record, and the production throughout Happiness feels stylish and luxurious. If you rewind back to 2010, you could say that Happiness stood out on its own as a sleek, confident and highly polished pop debut. The UK charts at the time was dominated by the rise of dance pop and EDM. The influence of the UK version of the X Factor talent show also had a huge impact. Happiness is deeply rooted in 80s nostalgia, even down to the monochrome stylish artwork. The images of the duo, Theo Hutchcraft and Adam Anderson, look like they belong in a fashion designer campaign. The striking artwork and photography are like an extension to the album's songs. I always appreciate when artists deliver well-executed artwork. And just by looking at the images, you already have a flavour of how the album is going to sound like. If you are listening and own a copy of the picture discs of Happiness that was released last year, it includes some stunning photography and the gatefold is truly out of this world. It's funny that the title of the album is called Happiness for two reasons. Number one, being that the actual song Happiness didn't make the final cut, it was included as a bonus track. But more on that song later on in the episode. And number two, the overall style of the record is quite sad and melancholic. It's ironic calling this collection of songs Happiness when it's far from it. I read that Theo explained that they chose the title because it was a reflection of the duo while making the record. They were unemployed, living on benefits in Manchester, and they were feeling pretty hopeless about their future in music. Theo and Adam leaned into the sad banger territory for Happiness, and I think this goes back to the visual contrast of the record. Hertz always presented themselves in sharp, high-fashion suits with slick back hair, a very perfect and composed look. The title of Happiness fits that polished exterior, while the music reveals the messy, painful emotions underneath. If you are a regular listener to the podcast, then you will know by now my love for all things synth pop. I have so much nostalgia for this record. It takes me back to the iTunes days and downloading the album straight onto my purple iPod Nano. I loved the album back in the day and I love it even more now. Radio 2 played their singles in constant rotation, and the record was just like a breath of fresh air. It is the perfect candidate for the Underrated Jam series because even though it was commercially successful in 2010, I feel that the record has fallen off the radar a little bit over the years. The 15th anniversary last year made me fall in love with the record all over again, and it got me thinking about including the record as part of my podcast. So here we are. If you are discovering this record through this episode, then you're in for a treat. I hope after this episode is finished that you check out Happiness. If you love cinematic synth pop with immaculate production, I guarantee that you won't be disappointed. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I will not be playing clips of the songs, so if you are curious, then please support the artists I cover by streaming, downloading, or buying physical copies. Thank you. Track 1, Silver Lining. You know, I'm drawn to anything melancholic in music, and when it's paired with synth pop, it just makes it even sweeter. I read that Silver Lining reportedly went through 72 different mixes before completion. When you listen to this track, you can fully understand the meticulous madness that this went through in the studio. Silver Lining sets up Happiness perfectly. It gives you a clear indication that this record is going to contain sleek, stylish synth pop with some on point production and richly layered instrumentals. This track has got some fantastic synth work and it's drenched in mood and atmosphere. It immediately establishes the band's signature cinematic melodrama. The production is tight and layered, with the percussion, piano, and acoustic guitar wrapped alongside the synths and electronica. It bridges the gap between 80s synth pop and modern dark wave, making it a great example of why the album still sounds so fresh today. I love the lyrics in the chorus. When the world surrounds you, I'll make it go away. Paint the sky with silver lining. I will try to save you, cover up the grey with silver lining. Not only is it beautiful writing, but also ties in with the album artwork. The monochrome with hints of grey and silver. And I hear this track when I look at the images. I love when artists have that high level of consistency with their projects, and Happiness remains concise and cohesive from start to finish. And I didn't realise that this track was co-written by David Snedden from Fame Academy, which was a talent competition popular in the UK during the early 2000s. And this was just before his co-writing credit on National Anthem by Lana Del Rey. Track 2, Wonderful Life. So I just want to give a quick disclaimer before I start to talk about this track. The lyrics contain references to suicide, and my main priority is to make sure everyone listening feels comfortable. Please take care while listening and feel free to skip this track if the discussion is triggering to you. Thank you. I don't think this will come as a surprise to my regular listeners that this track is one of my favourite songs of all time. I have lost count how many times I've played this. I was completely obsessed with it during 2010, and all these years later, I love it even more. I am not sure what Hertz put into Wonderful Life, but I swear it gets better and better the more you listen to it. It's everything that I love about synth pop and an awesome production that is just so fucking addictive. But when you dig deeper, especially in the lyrics, it slowly reveals something more disturbing, and that is why I wanted to include the disclaimer. It's a love song, but not as you would expect. Despite the stunning glossy production in a sea of synths, the protagonist in the song, Susie, saves a man from potentially jumping off the Severn Bridge. The pre chorus confirms, but there's something in the air. They share a look in silence, and everything is understood. They fully understand each other in that moment, and there seems to be an instant connection between the two people, despite the man's despair. Susie reassures her man in the chorus, and the production switches to reflect the positive nature in the lyrics. Theo sings, "Don't let go, never give up. It's such a wonderful life." It's direct, right to the point, and it's something that we all forget during difficult times of pain and despair. The storytelling continues in verse 2 as we learn that the man had a family, but the world has got him down on his knees. Maybe his marriage broke down and eventually life took its toll on him and became too much for him to cope. I think it's an absolutely beautiful concept for a song. Two people meet when the man wanted to end his life in that moment, but it seems like it's love at first sight, and Susie saves his life. I absolutely adore the writing here, which gives the listener an indication that it could be a happy ending. Theo sings, "So she throws him at the wall, her kisses burn like fire, and suddenly he starts to believe. He takes it in his arms, and he doesn't know why, but he thinks that he begins to see." Through their passion and desire for each other, he knows that Susie is right, and he will get better. He's finally with someone who understands him for who he is, and that he feels safe with Susie. It's gorgeous storytelling, and Theo's passionate vocal performance is at the core of the song. The production and instrumental is out of this world. The reverb on Theo's vocals, the synth work, and that instrumental breakdown with the saxophone drifting in and out is truly fucking perfection. It's beautifully crafted pop music with so much style and substance that it has that irresistible melancholic edge. It's something that you would expect from the Pet Shop Boys. Intellectual pop music full of class and quality. It's also a dance floor banger that you can just lose yourself to, and a stark reminder that life will get better. I will always have so much love for this track, and honestly, I could go on. It's no surprise that this was a smash hit all across Europe upon release, and Hertz have a massive following in Germany. You guys have such amazing taste with all things synth pop, and I'm finding myself playing this track again at every available opportunity. Track 3, Blood, Tears and Gold. So, I will be completely honest with you. I was on the fence for the longest time with this track. I enjoyed it back in the day, but there was something that wasn't clicking for me. And that is fine. You have to accept that you won't connect to absolutely everything and you can't force it. However, during the preparation for this episode, I've been listening to the record quite a lot, and I really don't know what I was thinking back in 2010. Looking back now, I think it was slightly underwhelming following on from the first two tracks. I mean, how can you top that? But this track is a slow burn, and that is the point. This is a sophisticated mid tempo ballad with some beautiful layered tension in the production. It slowly starts to creep up on you and really gets under your skin. Now that I am older, I can appreciate the heartbreak and beauty in this song. Theo's vocal delivery here is particularly vulnerable. There is a combination of desperation and defeat that really highlights the melodrama. The track is driven by those amazing drums that I never really took notice of before. It's funny how you can pick up little details like that years later, and your opinion and point of view changes from feeling mixed to a connection. That piano that comes in right at the end is absolutely beautiful. And this is another collaboration with David Snedden, and I had no idea back in the day that he actually featured on this record. I didn't own the CD of Happiness, so it wasn't obvious back then with the writing and production credits. And from what I remember with iTunes, information like that was a bit hard to find. One thing about collecting vinyl now is that it's so much fun looking at the credits and all the little details. Streaming is great, but a record like Happiness, especially, really shines on vinyl. Track 4, Sunday. When this track was released as the fourth single in 2011, this received a mixed response from the critics, especially in the UK. I had to go back to refresh my memory, and holy shit, some of these critics, I swear, are on another planet sometimes. I know music is subjective, but come on, calling this track bland and that it has a lack of depth is just not on. This is one of my highlights from the record, and it always made me happy hearing it on Radio 2. It sounded so great and it still holds up now. The instrumental and production are so layered and full of detail, and I love tracks that blend acoustic guitar with synths and electronica. But here, Sunday also leans heavily into Euro disco and trance pop influences, featuring a relentless thumping beat that runs all the way through it. The acoustic guitar texture is unexpected, but I love details like that. Things that shouldn't work, but they do, and it's so satisfying. I also love the glacial shimmering synth layers. It sounds cold and sharp, and when I hear the song, I picture a cold, frosty Sunday morning in winter. Theo's vocals on Sunday are some of my favourites on the entire record. His range goes from really low in the bridge in the "if you don't come back tomorrow, I'll go" line, to his falsetto backing vocals, which are like layers of almost operatic texture with reverb. It's stunning. It's the ultimate cry on the dance floor moment on the record. It has that frantic energy of dancing your way out of heartbreak. I still find it hard to believe that the critics called this track bland, and it just goes to show you that they get it wrong so many times. This track is stunning, and I would like to see them have a go at trying to capture heartbreak this beautiful. Track 5, Stay. This is one of my favourites from the record. Holy shit, I have no idea how Theo and Adam do it. How they can make heartbreak sound so gorgeous like this. It blows my mind. It's romantic, melancholic, heartfelt, gloomy, and full of longing and despair. It never fails to give me chills every time I hear it. Stay is the album's grand gospel-tinged power ballad, and arguably the most epic moment on Happiness. While many tracks on the record are cold and electronic, Stay feels warm, organic, and deeply human. There are still the synths and electronic elements in the song, but it's built around a simple, melancholic piano melody played by Adam, and the electronica is added for texture around the piano. When that chorus kicks in and Theo delivers that killer line, "We say goodbye in the pouring rain, and I break down as you walk away." It's just absolutely stunning. Anyone who has experienced heartbreak will definitely connect to this, but it's just so addictive. Just everything about this track is pure magic. The use of the backing vocals in the chorus gives the track a spiritual quality. It moves away from the pop, and this fits into a classic Torch song. It's also got that cinematic orchestral feel running through it. And by the final chorus, it reaches a massive wall of sound that never feels muddy. The production is crystal clear, with Theo's vocals cutting through the build and the instrumental. Stay is a great example of a song that doesn't sound like 2010 at all. This could have been released in 1985 or in 2026, and it still sounds fresh and relevant because its emotional core is so classic. And the video that was filmed in Iceland is truly a work of art. Track 6, Illuminated. This track is a showcase of the duo's electronic side, and there's so much scope in the sonic atmosphere. The intro alone opens with a haunting instrumental that really gives the track some emotional weight. The drum programming isn't as harsh here compared to the rest of the record, but it's still effective. It's got this hypnotic quality about it. The beat echoes reminiscent of 80s power ballads. Think of artists like Tears for Fears and Phil Collins and a-ha, which also use electronic texture and layers in their own production styles. Illuminated was a bit of a sleeper hit when it was released. It gained a massive second life in the UK a year after Happiness was released, after being featured on a high-profile TV trailer campaign for Sky. It ended up being released as a double A-side with Better Than Love. Another collaboration with David Snedden. I interpret this track as providing a sense of hope on the record. It's a masterclass in how to use reverb, space, and texture. The overall sound feels like it was recorded in a massive empty hall, which adds to the melancholy of the overall sound in Happiness. Track 7, Evelyn. And from that more atmospheric moment, the album takes a darker turn with Evelyn. This is another one of my favourites from the record. The way how this track builds and explodes is just breathtaking. We don't actually know who this Evelyn character is. Theo explained during a live performance of the song, "There once was a nurse called Evelyn," and that's all we know. I think that adds to the mystery, keeping that story open to interpretation. And not everything has to be explained in black and white to fully appreciate something. This track contains some of my favourite production. It's so melodramatic and powerful. It's got that trademark melancholy running through it, but it's also got some grit and power through those drums when the instrumental finally opens up. That instrumental break is fucking breathtaking. I love how they let this fully breathe, as that tells the story just as much as the lyrics. There is this unsettling tension, frustration in the almost industrial mechanical pulse. It feels quite claustrophobic on headphones, and I hope I'm making sense here, but at the same time, it feels completely beautiful and powerful. And my god, you can just lose yourself inside this song. I completely forgot how good this was. If you own a copy of Happiness on vinyl, then this track is such a standout. There is so much separation with the instruments and Theo's vocals, and it sounds wonderful. Evelyn is romantic, but with this obsessive bitterness, which is so difficult to balance right. But Hertz execute this mood with so much ease and precision. Track 8, Better Than Love. So this was their debut single, and what a banger this is. Honestly, I have so much nostalgia and happy memories attached to this record. It's been an absolute joy rediscovering this all over again for this episode. The only way I can describe this track is that it's a full-on synth-pop banger masterpiece. The synth work and bass are truly out of this world. It sounds fantastic. If this track was released in 1986, it would have been a monster hit. And listening to it in 2026, it's still got this timeless quality about it. I think Hertz were ahead of the curve back in 2010. The forward-thinking production executed to the highest level is not what was popular back then. Pop music wasn't dominated with the 80s revival and trend during that time. That arrived much later on in the decade, and that trend now really hasn't gone away. I love the track placement of Better Than Love. It feels like a sonic palette cleanser following on from the more down-tempo tracks before it. This is like the explosive dance floor moment in the second half of the record, and After Evelyn feels like an emotional release. Track 9, Devotion. This track features vocals from Kylie Minogue, and this collaboration are like a match made in heaven. Their vocals complement each other perfectly. And I know the songs don't sound the same, but it reminds me of the Pet Shop Boys track In Denial, which also features vocals from Kylie. She brings that same energy to Devotion. Her controlled vocals are absolutely stunning. It feels like a conversation or a shared feeling rather than one-sided emotion. The production is slightly softer and more spacious, but it's still polished and synth-led. It's got a dreamy quality about it, a soft, warm glow, which makes it nostalgic. I don't know why, it sounds like a song that you have heard before from the 80s, but at the same time, it still feels fresh, modern, and contemporary. It might not be the flashy dance floor banger, but Devotion brings something new to the table and widens the sonic atmosphere of Happiness. It works in the context of the second half of the record, and the track placement has really been well thought out. The tracks are perfectly balanced to one another, and it gives you the full album experience that many artists were lacking in the 2010 pop landscape. To end the track with just Kylie singing Take Me to Safety, then a closing breath from her, is nothing short of breathtaking. It's the only way I can describe it. Track 10, Unspoken. I would say that Unspoken is the album's true full-on ballad. It's cinematic and emotional, with some stunning piano work from Adam. Theo's vocals are at the heart of the song. It's controlled but full of emotion underneath. It feels like in places that he is holding back, which fits the idea of unspoken perfectly. The piano, synths, and orchestra that eventually swell into something grand and epic sounds like the emotional climax of a film. The production is stunning and perfectly balanced. Theo sounds crystal clear with a hint of distant reverb. Hertz could have used synth strings in this track, which would have sounded epic, but instead, they've got the London Studio Orchestra on board. Conducted by Simon Hale, it gives the track film score territory for sure, and it feels like the album's most ambitious and fully realised moments. I love the lines in verse 2. We watched the rockets kiss the sky. I saw the flames burn out in your eyes. Just wow. The imagery and poetic nature of the words used just takes the song even further, in my opinion. Saying, I'd rather be lonely than be by your side is both heartbreaking and devastating at the same time. How Hertz managed to make pain and suffering sound this beautiful is mind blowing. Track 11, The Water. And from that emotional peak, the album gently drifts into its closing moments. On the original release, The Water closed out the record. This is completely stripped of the synths and electronica and is backed by piano and the London Studio Orchestra. This ballad feels haunting, fragile, and incredibly atmospheric. There's a real sense of space in it, like everything is slightly drifting. Theo's vocal performance is drenched in reverb, which gives it this ghostly feeling. The strings feel more subtle and atmospheric. It's less about big swells and more about texture and mood. This isn't about having a grand emotional climax to the record. Instead, it chooses to quietly fade, like a metaphor of being drowned out by your feelings and emotions. Theo sings at the end, I wish that I was stronger. I'd separate the waves, not just let the water take me away. It's like being suffocated by what's going on in your head, and the water is just pulling you in. And I think the instrumental outro is a reflection of that. It is beautifully executed and closes out happiness with the same melancholy that starts the record with Silver Lining. Track 12, Verona. Verona was originally a hidden track which was included at the end of The Water. This is now included separately as part of the 15th anniversary release from 2025, so I have decided to include this track as part of the tracklist here. It serves as a short, just over 2-minute interlude, and to me feels like a final note or epilogue. Verona was a hidden gem within an underrated gem, something almost tucked away originally, but deserved more. It works beautifully as a final note, and to give it justice, you really have to experience the beauty of it. It sounds like the beautiful city of Verona, haunting, atmospheric, and tragic, dripped in the glossy melancholia of what Hertz brings as songwriters and musicians. So that is a wrap on Happiness, the debut by Hertz. Even though this album was a success when it first came out, it really does feel like it's fallen off the radar a bit over the years, and I don't think it deserves that at all. For me, it is honestly one of the strongest pop debuts out there, but it's just not talked about in that way. And what really stands out is how well it's aged. A lot of music from that late 2000s, early 2010s period can sound quite dated now, But Happiness doesn't. It still feels fresh, still feels relevant, and still hits emotionally in the same way. It's pure pop, but with real substance behind it. The production is meticulously crafted. Every detail feels considered, and even visually, it all ties together with that same sense of style and identity. I've always felt like Hertz should be much bigger, especially here in the UK. They've built a really strong following across Europe, particularly in places like Germany, but they've still somehow remained underrated. And that's exactly why I wanted to include this album in this series, because when you come back to it like this, it really reminds you what a gem it is. Hurts are underrated. Happiness is underrated. And honestly, their whole discography deserves more attention because everything they do is just consistently high quality. If you've never properly sat with this album, or if it's been a while, I'd really recommend going back to it because it's absolutely worth your time. And if you are new to Hertz, then I recommend starting with Happiness and going through their impressive discography. I am not going to talk about all of the bonus tracks that were included on the deluxe from last year, but I will give the track Happiness a quick mention here as it's one of my favourites. It's hard to believe that this didn't make the final cut because what a banger this is. I still find it quite amusing that the title track of the record didn't even make the standard track list. That just goes to show the strength and quality of all the other tracks if this wasn't even considered. However, Happiness has found a new lease of life with the other deluxe tracks as part of the 15th anniversary. And I am so happy that I finally have this track and all the other treats on vinyl. Even though the picture disc that was released last year is beautiful, I ended up purchasing the standard black variant recently, and if any of you out there listening is thinking of picking this up, I'm happy to report that it sounds wonderful, as I'm not really a fan of picture discs in general. This album was made to be played loud on vinyl. And if you've never heard Happiness, now's the time, because this really is an underrated gem in every sense. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you've enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow, like or share, as it helps other music lovers discover my podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the Indie Pop Girl podcast. It really helps the algorithm push the video out to more people, and as a small independent podcast that's still growing, every like and subscription genuinely makes a huge difference. I'm posting full episodes, shorts and little teasers over there, so there's always something new to watch. Let me know in the comments if you love Hertz, and let me know what your favourite track is. I always read and respond to comments, and I love hearing what you all think. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at the Indie Pop Girl, and on TikTok at the Indie Pop Girl podcast. And if you want to dive even deeper, there's a public Spotify playlist called Favourite Tracks from Podcast Episodes, where I add some of my top picks from each record I cover. It's updated as new episodes drop, so you might just find your next obsession. I'll be back very soon for another instalment in the Underrated Gems series. I'll be teasing the next episode on my socials shortly, so make sure you are following me. Until then, I'm Rachel, the Indie Pop Girl. Thanks for listening, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.